Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry and it's time for some final thoughts as I wrap up book 4 of Bloodsword and head on to book 5. Now, this book has felt like the safest, least dangerous book in the series so far. And I couldn't say that early on at the outset, but as the adventure progressed towards its conclusion, that feeling began to solidify about halfway through Sheol. Now don't get me wrong, there were lots of dangers, but at this point the adventure was very archetypal. Most of the choices were fairly obvious. And, I didn't get into very many fights. The three fights I did get into, the three truly memorable ones, were all pretty tough, challenging fights. However, a lot of the dangers and conundrums and puzzles and so on in Sheol itself were very much of a common sense nature, or a do the most heroic archetypal thing you can do in this situation. Even before Sheol with Circe's Island, our simple do not set foot on the island strategy worked quite well in our favour. It turns out it probably wasn't the best strategy, but it was definitely something like second best, and we could have had some really horrible stuff probably happen to us on the island there. This book suffers from some layout issues, and I'm going to give a perfect example of this. Quite often, during the adventure, we would see an adjacent section. So here, when I was reading section 52, I could see section 53, right? And this happened some 2 or 3 times during the adventure, where a very important decision, a very important upcoming decision with consequences, had one of those consequences proudly displayed very shortly before it was to be chosen. So here, for example, at section 52, we were fighting Icon the Ungodly before Azrael the Angel with Cordelia the Ghost, and this is a left-hand page section, section 52, and we can see section 53 here on the right-hand page. And we can see that, it's something to do with the angel Azrael, some sort of consequences for being selfish, not being courageous and brave enough. It's an auto-kill section, looks like an entire party auto-kill, probably a section we don't want to visit. So at the end of this section, we're directed to section 28. And we just asked if we got the blood sword yet, which is cool. Okay, fine, it's just a quick do you have something check section, but it's not really going to distract us much from what we've just seen. And then we go to 493, and we are posed an important question, and we're asked if we want to go to section 53 or 43. We haven't particularly been near section 43 recently, but section 53, we've seen that very, very, very recently. And if we happen to glance across at it, we're not likely to forget it. And we're probably going to go, oh, we don't want to go to section 53, we want to go to section 43. And actually there's a very nice clue in section 493, which is easy to miss. Well, no, it's not here actually, it's 43. So we agree someone's going to perish. give up their life so that she may live. No greater man hath this, no greater love hath man than this, that he give up his life that another may live. That's it. 124. It is at this point that the angel says, no, it is the previous one. Okay, 28, 493, right, yeah. Because when he asks if one of us will give up our life for her, he also says, where is it? It's very important, right? Maybe it is in the other section. Huh. Okay. She cannot leave here unless another agrees to take her place, right? That's not the important thing. So, 43. Let's find it again. Sorry about this. I should have maybe prepared a little more in advance. I just crawled out of bed and, clawed my way downstairs. It was far too hot to record last night. Oh dear. Oh. And now I'm sneezing because I've had the windows all open. 124. Right. The important clue. Is here, yes. But this is the unalterable law of God, that though I may pick and choose among the living, taking whom I will, and after whatever span of years, even I cannot change the total tally of the dead. So when he asks us to choose which one of us will die, he's already told us, you don't get to choose. I get to choose. And he chooses Antasius, who practically begs for death and has been avoiding it for so long anyway. It's a small clue, and it comes after the decision has been made, but it's a little way of saying the consequences may not be as dire as you think. I mean, he then says you can all go back to the mortal world, and I'll come and take my pick, Well, he says I'll come for you. And he probably will eventually when our time comes. I mean, we can't do an Arnold Rimmer here, and escape death that way. So, as I said about section 53, that wasn't the first time that had happened in this book. And it could have been avoided. Right? It could have been avoided if 52 was on a right-hand page, and then we'd have to turn the page to 53. I'm talking like a physical book here, because we've got a double-page spread layout here, right? So if they weren't on the same double page, this could have been avoided by jiggling things around, arranging illustrations or bits of filler art or something to make sure that this ended up being on the next section, on the next page. And like I said, this wasn't the first time this had happened. There was also a lot of times where we were sent to adjacent sections. So we're like, sent back to section 2, sent off somewhere else back to section 3, somewhere else back to section 4 shortly afterwards. Now, I don't know if that was a rush in the editing process, but it feels like something a lot of the early choose your own adventure books, well, no, not just early, a lot of the choose your own adventure books and those Dungeons and Dragons game books with no, they were ruleless as well, very choose your own adventure. I can't remember what they're called, like Paths, Dungeons and Dragons Path of Adventure or something, I don't know, right? But they had a lot of, you begin at section 1, if you want to turn left, turn to section 2, if you want to turn right, turn to section 3. And yes, that allowed the story to flow quite easily without hunting down sections, but it also felt incredibly simplistic, and also you could often see the consequences of your actions before you made the decisions. This plagued those two series and made them somewhat less enjoyable to play. Sometimes you could see more than one consequence of your actions if they were particularly short sections. And it did mean you were just reading through it in a rather linear manner, occasionally skipping pages, rather than actually seeking out the consequences of your actions and seeing what would happen. Like, go find it, commit to it, then you've got, this was less of the thing where some old school players would like stick their finger in a page when they make a choice and go and look at one of the consequences and see if they like it or not, but more a look at the opposite page, it's blatantly obvious, oh, turn the page, if you don't like it, turn back and take the other choice. Yes, yeah, bit of an issue with that. So there was a little bit of that in this book, where often specific consequences were displayed ahead of time. Next, let's talk about the massive equipment wipe, where everything except for the blood sword was taken away from us, and we were given new equipment. Obviously, that's a bit rough, to lose everything we acquired, especially in most of your traditional game books. There's no sort of character progression. There's no leveling up mid-adventure, because they're like single standalone adventures. And we're talking of a time period when game design was such that you would get your experience and level up and everything at the end of the adventure. You wouldn't interrupt the flow of the adventure to do it yourself, because AD&D 3rd edition hadn't come out yet, and computer games that gave you instant levels, sometimes even mid-combat, weren't, that was more of a technical limitation of the way computers handled things than it was necessarily a design choice. Or people, I don't know, some of the designers might have just liked giving you the level instantly and gone, hey, yeah, you don't need to wait for it, have it right now, So, and the fact that we're gaining levels and progressing in this series and keeping the same characters across multiple adventures is great. However, to lose all of our items that we have acquired was quite unfortunate. Yeah, we've lost the axe of Heraclos that the warrior had. He can't throw the axe anymore. The trickster doesn't have his magic sword of giant slaying, or a magic bow. Our sage doesn't have the golden snuff box of Shormiano, or his charm of shielding that gave him +1 armor. And our enchantress doesn't have the magic ring that gave her +1 psychic ability, which made it easier for her to cast spells. However, There were a handful of opportunities in Book 1 to lose all our equipment and have to play on without it. If we'd gone to one of the Magi, he could have confiscated our weapons. If we had gone through the magic shower just before the temple in the big lava pits, the elven fairy folk would have tried to steal all our equipment, and we would have emerged, practically naked on the other side. That would have then made crossing, well, it would have made our progression a lot harder going forwards. In Book 3, if we were arrested for brawling or criminal activities near the beginning, we could have gone to prison and lost a load of equipment again. So this isn't the first time we could have lost our belongings. It is, however, the first unavoidable one, so it hits pretty hard. That being said, this book was still tracking items from Book 1. Alright? There were a lot of previous items from earlier books that could have been incredibly useful in this adventure, and without them, we would have probably had a harder time. Now, we have had to pick and choose which items to keep and which items to pass on before, because we have a limited inventory space, before we progress in the adventure at numerous points. And as I said, this adventure was still using items from Book 1. It was a lot of items from Book 2. We could have used the Iron Bell on the island. We even could have tried using one of the 5 orbs from Book 2, which are all single-use items, against Lai Kung, the Thunder God. There were not a lot of items in this book which we could pick up to make things easier at those particular junctures. However, not lacking items from earlier books would not have made it impossible for us to complete the adventure. All of the items that we required to complete the adventure were within the adventure in a self-contained manner. It's just that having played the previous books would have made things a lot easier for us. Now, with the Great Equipment Reset, yes, we've lost some nice items that were very, very helpful for us. However, what it does do is mean that we're going into Book 5 with a preset array of equipment, right? No previous items to track, apart from the Blood Sword, which we just picked up this book. And if we look at the characters in Book 5, they are bearing the exact same equipment that we ended up with at the end of Book 4. So they're not with their typical stuff. The Sage isn't wearing his studded leather armor. The Sage and Enchantress are wearing studded leather armor instead of their ringmail and silver armor. The Warrior's wearing his plate armor that he just got. It is a set equipment list. Interestingly, the new characters have money. The old characters have... Well, we were instructed to lose all our items, so I included the belt pouches in that full of money. Otherwise, if they get to keep it, they got about 1,200 each. So if we need to spend money in this adventure, I will have to think about whether we should have been allowed to keep it or not. Now, for a long time, I was concerned when looking at the beginning of Book 5 that the sage's healing had changed from a d6 minus 2 to a d6 minus 1. And I was obviously concerned that it might have been a typo. I did wonder if it was something that to represent how epic and heroic the heroes had become. What I had not done is taken a closer look at the enchanter and notice that their spellcasting is now on 1 die. There. A big change. I'd noticed that the warrior had the second attack ability. I had not noticed that the trickster's dodging ability had changed to basically being permanently defending. So he's going to be virtually impossible for enemies to hit now. It is very tempting to, therefore, just have the trickster go solo all the fights. Give him the blood sword. And in a solo run, that might be a very interesting thing to try. What I am considering strongly is playing the new version of Book 5. Because it's all well, it's not bookmarked, but it is all hyperlinked in a very helpful way. We got a load of links here at the front. The adventure itself, and the choices, I believe, are, turn to section 1. There we go, section 1. Not particularly reading it. I saw the words True Magi and something beginning with an M. See them again. Turn to 505. There we go. So that's going to involve a lot less scrolling around searching for sections, which will be great. Looking here, we can see it has the original illustrations. So I'm not particularly missing out on very much. I will say that there are 2 versions of Book 5, and I don't just mean, the old version and the reprint. I mean there are actual differences. I'm led to believe that the old Book 5 was an unfinished draft that was sent off to the publishers to see if they liked it enough that the authors could then finish it up and do a bit more tidying up, improve some sections and stuff, and the publishers just printed it straight away anyway. Instead of approving it, they were just like, yeah, okay, look, we'll just print this one. I don't know if it was running late at that time, or the publishers just got a bit impatient or misunderstood. I don't know, right? But essentially, the old Book 5 maybe had a few mistakes, maybe had a few things that weren't quite as refined as they could have been. The new Book 5 includes the changes the authors would have originally liked to make to the old Book 5 before it went to print. So, to my mind, that makes it the more authentic experience, the intended experience, the sort of director's cut, if you will. However, I have noticed that the new books contain some very different rules for combat. You can move to any square on the tactical map. That's great. Old rules, you could move to an enemy or an exit, and that was it. Fight is fight. Defend is defend. Shoot is shoot. Yeah, flee is flee. Prepare a spell, cast a spell, sure. However, let me find this. We got the blood sword. Multiplayer parties. The solo team option is missing completely from the new books. It's not there. We've got a battle order, special character sections, and the character types, and we're straight in here. Now, there was something about moving away from an enemy in combat, right? Under the new rules, if you want to move away from an enemy in combat, awareness has nothing to do with it anymore. And instead it's just a matter of if that opponent has attacked you already this round or not. If they have attacked you already, they'll hit you on the way out. Well, no, if they haven't attacked you already, you can just go. They were clearly busy giving their attention to someone else. And if they have attacked you already, then the only way you can retreat is to take the defend action and stand there for another round. And then next round, you can leave because you took the retreat action last round, even if the enemy attacked you this round. Now, that's simpler, and it does encourage players to take the defense action more often, but it takes out the awareness portion of it. It removes the trickster's ability to bounce around the battlefield like a yo-yo, or a dodgems, or bumper car, or whatever, a bouncy, it's like he's on a bouncy castle or something, right? The trickster's mobility did help a lot. I think I'm going to use the old rules for movement in combat. Well, no, I'll use the old rules for disengaging from a foe, because they make Remy's awareness of an 8 matter. Not that he's going to get an awareness of 9. And we have occasionally come across awareness 9 foes. So on to our new superheroic abilities. The warrior gets to attack twice. Not with the same weapon. So he can attack with the blood sword, punch or kick, head bush, shoulder barge, anything, right? If he has a second weapon, sadly not the Axe of Heraklos, he can attack with that instead. But since he suffers no penalties for attacking without a weapon anymore, he's got big armoured gauntlets and can just punch people with them, it's almost not worth picking up a second weapon because it will just waste an item slot unless it's a magic weapon. Having a second attack also means he doesn't need to defend so much anymore. Little early morning yawn, it's fine. Remy, everyone now needs 3 dice to hit Remy, 4 dice if he's defending. They don't add 1 anymore, so they're not doing 2 dice plus 1, 3 dice plus 1. It's a straight 3 dice and 4 dice. He is now an incredibly hard target for foes to tackle. Even if they were fighting prowess of 10 or 11, then they'd have a sort of 10.5 is kind of the sweet spot on 3 dice. Anything under a 10 is going to have troubles hitting him. And if he defends, it's going to be even harder still. Brother Kern now heals more effectively. Given the amount of 1s and 2s we had on healing rolls from Book 2 onwards, I am incredibly grateful for this. I remember discussing with a few people, and they assumed that it was always supposed to be d6 minus 1, and it was just sort of corrected in Book 5. I wasn't so sure. Now that I've seen how it's addressed at the end of Book 4, it's very clearly explained. You get these new abilities now. Speaking of which, while his healing is more potent, Ariadne's spellcasting dropping down from 2 dice to 1 dice means she'll be able to cast all of her spells much more effectively. Yes, she's lost the magic ring that gives her +1 psychic ability, but she's also taking away a whole one of those 2 casting dice. No longer are we looking at a 2 to 12 11-point range with a bell curve that ends in the middle around the 6, 7, 8 mark at its strongest point, But instead we just got a 1d6 roll, a 1 to 6 spread with equal distribution. So if she prepares a single spell, takes her psychic ability down to a 7, let's say a difficulty level 3 spell, she's doing it on a 4 or less, right? As opposed to needing to try and roll a 4 or less on 2 dice. She's going to be casting spells much more effectively this adventure, and for that, I am grateful. I don't know if it'll feel too powerful after what I've been used to, but it seems like all the heroes are going to be much more effective, apart from maybe Brother Kern, because Remy's dodging ability means he won't need to be healing the others as often as before. Overall, I'd say it was a fun adventure. I did say it felt safer. Now, you'd imagine, I probably said this earlier, I'm not entirely certain, you'd imagine the feeling of stuff being safer would be from the fact everyone was, a rank 5 character with more health, and a little more damage, much more survivability than before. But it wasn't really that. It was the choices presented, the situations, they all felt fairly safe. During the adventure, I did see that there was an opportunity for Screebo the Raven to do something, but he left us at Angvar's Mead Hall, meaning that either we would have to avoid that location entirely and go tackle the guard dog Garm without the honey cake to have Screebo assist us later on, or that situation was just earlier. Oh, maybe to do it for Screech Owls, I don't know. And that's something I can hopefully discover on a future playthrough, but for now, I think we'll put this one to bed, and I'll take a little break for a few days or something before I start Book 5. I will be looking for a game book series to play after Book 5. I know I want to start a Lone Wolf playthrough at some point soon, but also maybe something a bit shorter. Golden Dragon is only 6 books. The Blood Feud of Alpheus is only 3 books, and it's basically the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur, so it's fairly easy to remember the story and work your way through it if you want to play a fairly faithful playthrough. Those are the 2 I'd probably be looking at, and then I'd probably stagger Golden Dragon over a while and play them individually, because the Golden Dragon adventures are not linked. You don't play the same character. You just... They're all standalone stories, each with a predefined main character. In one you play a knight, in one you play a tomb raider, in one you play a... a magician. They're all, different standalone adventures. One of them where you play a knight, the main villain is your arch nemesis from many adventures before, So they're all standalone stories, and I can drop them in here and there. Blood Feud of Alpheus, you play Alpheus. I do want to revisit The Way of the Tiger. It's been a long time since I last played Book 2 and got let down by some very bad dice rolls in combat. Ah, dear. I'm not sure if I was even on the wrong path or the correct one at that point. But it was certainly an interesting point, indeed. So yeah, I might put up a little poll about that on the community section in a bit. Give it a little more thought and just go, and I'll, obviously explain, Lone Wolf isn't even on the poll. It's happening, so it's just, what else? There's been obviously a little bit of a delay in this episode coming out because I got hit with a surprise invitation into the Lost Eidolons playtest for the Veil of the Witch spin-off game. And so I've been giving that due care and attention. I'll be continuing to play that for the next week or so. I'm not sure how long the playtest is. It might be just a week. It might be more. But I'll give it a decent amount of episodes. And I'll structure other videos around that. Okay, well, I think that about ends it here for Bloodsword, Book 4. You'll notice this is my tentative Book 5 campaign. I'll probably go through and delete a load of the old maps in a bit, unless I think I might make use of them again. thank you all very much for watching, and I will look forward to seeing you all in the next video where we do make our beginning on Book 5, which I suspect will be more treacherous and a bit less easy to navigate than Book 4 was. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye for now.